Thank you so much. We love that, and we need that. So thank you so much. And to all of you out there, love you, and big hugs from warm, nicely Rome. So next time, be there. Here with me, we have some very distinguished guests, and which I would like to give a quick minute to introduce themselves. And Christina, if I may give you the floor first, please.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Conti, and I'm a customer engineering manager at Google Cloud.
Google is in the house, ladies and gentlemen. So Matthias, you're up next.
I'm next. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matthias Hartmann, Managing Director of New Telco.
Thank you so much. And out there, Kevin, hi to Singapore. How are you doing, my friend?
Oh, we're doing good, but we're going in and out of this protocol for COVID, so we just got heightened a bit. But who knows? Maybe another month, and then we get back to normal again. But hello, Rome. It's good to see you guys, man.
Oh, big hugs from Rome to Singapore. But let's stay there.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Then
Do you hear that? That was your applause.
Yes, yes. I'm sorry, Carvin. I'm from Data Center First. And we're a small data center. We're a data center operator in Southeast Asia, and I'm the CEO. Good to see you all, and glad to be here.
Thank you, Kevin. And let's go to Jeremy. Let's stay over there. Jeremy, welcome.
Hi, good evening from Singapore as well. Yeah, I'm based in the same city as Carvin. All right. I'm the Chief Operations Officer for BDX. BDX is basically the data center platform for I Square Capital, based out of managing the APAC region.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, and as well also for you, the same warm welcome from and hugs from Rome to the same Singapore. Thank you. So Martin, last but not least, welcome again. Thank you. Take the floor.
Thank you. Martin Atkinson, Senior Manager of Peering and Interconnection at Equinix. Co-location space and power isn't my forte, but nevertheless, I am here representing Equinix as one of the largest data center operators, if not the largest in the world. And yes, it's a great pleasure to be here again. In my other hat, the last one was Internet Exchange, which we also operate. This one is about our co-location space and power.
Thank you very much, Martin, and again also the warm welcome and hugs to you over there. So let's get to it. Data centers at the forefront of the vision of a data-driven world. Again, mouthful. So, Matthias, over to you first. The current data landscape. Who and what are the key drivers, and what are the latest developments in our data center world we live in? And do we need common views between the different areas of the world? Maybe you can answer that. Here we go.
I mean, what is driving the data center world? The data center world is driven by the digitalization of pretty much every part of our life. Local authorities, streaming, shopping, everything is digital today, and this drives our data center world. I don't think there's a big difference between the regions. This is in Europe the same than in the US, the same than in Asia. I think the driver is always the same. The regulations are different. I think that makes it different.
Regulations and governance, I guess, right?
European Union.
Oh, EU. There we go. But Kevin, you don't have enough of the European and the EU regulations and so on and so forth. How is the situation in Singapore? And maybe Jeremy, after that, you can comment on that one as well. So Kevin, over to you. How does it look? Especially in Asia, the DC landscape.
So basically, two things. There are two major drivers that's changing in Asia rapidly in the last 2 to 3 years, and Singapore, like everything else, is in the forefront of that change. And one is the seriousness of renewable energy right across Asia, from Japan all the way to China, and now down to Singapore. So in the last year and a half, this government of Singapore has taken a stance that's very similar to what the government of Amsterdam did about a couple of years ago, and we've put the data center into what we call a moratorium, which means effectively for the last year now, no data centers are allowed to be built in Singapore, and the government is now planning out a new set of policy to provide a set of policy and guidance so that that will determine how the next generation of data centers are going to look like with regards to our adoption of renewable energy usage. So we are now beyond efficiency, way beyond efficiency. The government has taken the bull by its horn and is tackling the fundamental issue of renewable power for Singapore, and it's going to be very challenging. But there goes. That's where we are now at the moment.
Thank you so
over
much.
to you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Jeremy, anything to add on this one, especially on, let's say, not only Singapore, but maybe the Asia Pac region?
Yeah, I'll share the same views as Calvin for Singapore pertaining to the moratorium. It's not new to us within this part of the world. Ireland's also done it, correct? They are also going through a very big moratorium as well. But I think
Jeremy, so sorry to interrupt you. Could you please speak up a little bit because we can hardly hear you? Sorry for that.
Sure. Yeah, is this better? Sorry, if you can hear me.
Yes. Please
okay.
Continue.
Yeah, sure. So apologies for the technical drawback. All right. Like what I said, I second what Calvin is highlighting and pertaining to Singapore. The moratorium is not new to us. But I think within APAC, what we are seeing within the region is that the renewables platform is actually very tough to implement because number one, it comes at a premium, and APAC is actually 17 different countries, 17 different legislations, right? Different maturities in terms of the whole aspects of 5G. All right, adoption, all right, within the region. That is also driving quite a fair bit of the data center footprint actually going crazily exploding, right, within the region. So, like for BDX, we are relatively in China, Hong Kong, entering markets of Indonesia, Taiwan, and also Philippines relatively soon. So these are challenging markets, right, where we are going to position renewables. But I think this is where we are now, right? I think all of us are here to sort of tackle this whole issue, all right, by the pros and cons.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. Martin, being truly global and covering, let's say, what do you not cover? But anyway, what's your take on the landscape? What's out there?
I feel almost as though I'm playing on a violin with only one string, Eric. In as much as on the last call we were talking about digital transformation, the rise of the digital economy, everyone's dependency in every sense, whether it's government or critical national infrastructure, whether it's entertainment, connected devices are exploding in their billions and trillions, everything connected. And so digital transformation is part and parcel of what we do. Data centers are no longer just about space and power in the dumb sense that they were maybe some while back, at least those that have been successful. And obviously Equinix has embraced that journey over the last 10 to 15 years, really, with multi-cloud access, but way beyond that in terms of digital services in the broadest sense. Without going into that, there are 6 different streams of digital services that we offer on our Fabric platform, and we take the enterprises that put their trust in us on that journey. So it's an enabler, and there is much data out there, which I wouldn't bore the audience with, on digital economy's resiliency and growth. an effect upon GDP generally for nations that embrace it. And it's a multifaceted problem where regulators, telcos, neutrality becomes very, very important. As I say, now's not maybe the time, but certainly Equinix is on that journey and we're taking our customers with us on that.
Thank you very much, Martin. And now let's, you could all say by having or owning or building it yourself, even sometimes with your bare hands, the data centers. And but being, let's say, in the big tech, Christina, are these guys right? Because you determine a small part of, let's say, all the data. So what's your take on it, on the landscape?
So I think everyone highlighted some very relevant aspects that go from the regulation, the sustainability, and the digitalization and data-driven aspect of what data centers are now at the center of. So from our perspective, of course, there are a number of things that I think we focus on that are important in this landscape, and these start with the digitalization that was just mentioned, because we have to ensure that the services that we eventually provide the users that have to use the technology that resides in these data centers is exactly what is needed in this transformation journey that we're in. And of course, at the same time, we have to do it guaranteeing the same, if not more, level of trust, openness, and in general, availability of the services that we provide. So I think it's an important challenge and a very big journey that's ahead of us, because we are really at the edge of a transformation in the way the data centers serve the users forward eventually. Okay, thank you. That's very interesting. I think we can go into that a bit deep. So Kevin, for you, we know, and we can't hardly keep up, and everything today goes super fast. And so how are we facing the speed to the market challenges? And some of you guys tipped on it already. And please explain the audience what are the main challenges. So the real new to go market strategies, and what do you come up with? How do you differentiate yourself with the new to go market strategies?
I think there are a couple of points that have to be brought up now at this stage. The data center market is really driven by our customers. And I think Christina has brought up a couple of very relevant points, and gentlemen before that as well from Equinix. Yeah, the network actually is gone beyond the networks today. So what I'm seeing is specialization in terms of the need for deployment to the edge and the need for data centers to look differently. Let me give you an example. I begin to have conversation with customers even in places like Indonesia, where they're talking about 10 kilowatt per rack and going up to maybe even 30 kilowatt per rack. And I'm amazed, and what I did was to start to kind of get deep a bit on it. And what we're seeing is that the server configurations are changing, and more people are asking us, more and more of our customers are asking us, Carvin, do you support water cool? No, not air cool, but really where the servers are no longer using air to cool the GPUs and the CPUs, but they're using what we call cold plate or water plate to cool them. And you are seeing one rack of computer that's 30 kilowatt per rack. Now, that is gonna have a major impact on the design, but there's a good side to that, because data centers today are very difficult to build and takes a lot of time because we are building them so big. You know, we're talking 30 megawatt building. We're talking about 3,000 racks in one building. And when you build such big building, it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of money. Now, what we're beginning to see is the possibility of taking that very big building and breaking that up into smaller little building. You know, we call it edge, but they're much faster to build, and they don't need water to cooling. They don't use air cooling anymore. It's all water cool. and it's going to be all over the place. And Christopher's right. The network is going to play its role to connect all these smaller data centers together, and the smaller data centers are going to be so much quicker to build. So the dynamics of the market, I believe, is going to change because of this changing requirement from our customer. Now, that is the most interesting thing that I see happening, especially for us in Data Center First, where we're looking at the next generation data center. What should we be building, and what do our customer want? That's the question we're asking right now, to give us a heads up on what the future looks like.
Thank you, Kevin. You said a couple of things. You're going up from 10 kilowatt with the demand to 30 kilowatt. Now, I come from a time where I was part of a data center, and I'm talking about some while ago, but then maybe one, max two. I mean, you need, as you mentioned correctly, complete different cooling. I mean, even if you go from, let's say, 8 to 10, I mean, we had a discussion yesterday evening, correct, about this. It is already bizarre, right? I mean, people should understand what it means to cool 8 to 10 kilowatt. So maybe Matthias, you can, because we had a discussion yesterday about this. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that one, please.
Yeah, this is because of we are just building a new data center. It is exactly the challenge you're facing. I mean, we are talking about, Martin mentioned 20 years ago when I started building data centers or co-location facilities. Yeah, it was dumb. It was a rack and a little bit of power. The planning was pretty easy. Today you face the challenge that which customers are you targeting? I have seen servers, 2 rack units with 3.5 kilowatt. We're talking about 2 rack units. Yeah, times 21. That's in theory, which fits in a physical cabinet. That would 60, 70 kilowatt. I mean, no chance to cool this down anymore. But if you plan today, like ours, we mentioned yesterday, peak is 10 kilowatt, because this is something you can cool down with, let's say, regular air condition systems.
Maximum.
Yeah, that's pretty much everything after that. You need water cooling and other things. And this is exactly what you need to do. You need to, which customers are you targeting? And that's the way you plan a data center today. And this is the challenge you have. I mean, Equinix is in a size of, they can do everything in one box. As a smaller company, I have to pretty much calculate very precisely which customers am I targeting and how do I build it? Because if you build a room with 10 kilowatt and compare this with the cost of 30 kilowatt, might be 3 times the cost just to build out the room.
I was about to say, and it starts all as Kevin mentioned before. It starts with the design. And guys, I don't know if I would like to do a quiz, but do you know how much it costs to start thinking about a good future-proof, as long as it can be future-proof? Future-proof is now 3 years, right? But max. So to start thinking about the design and really, in actual fact, you know, building that design, it is huge amount of money, a huge amount of money. And if you make this, let's say this, I wouldn't say a small mistake, but it is roughly like that. If your design is wrong and not for the coming years future-proof, I mean, you spend a huge amount of money. I mean, Jeremy, I mean, come in.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when we go higher in terms of our density per rack, right, the challenge is how do we keep that continuous cooling available for the customer, all right? That itself becomes a, you know, the normal cooling in itself is in terms of during the operation, the normal operating stance, it's relatively quite transparent. Well, the customers don't really face a lot of problems, but when you talk about data centers, customers also entrust us with their infrastructure, where we are also proposing a lot of SLA, service level agreements, with the customers. And, you know, when you talk about 10 kilowatts, 15 kilowatts, all right, the rate of rise within the temperature, if there is any issues with your air condition, you're talking about 1 to 2 minutes, service will fry. All right. That's why, from a cost perspective, what we are seeing within the region is customers are going 10, 15, 30 kilowatts. But the issue is from a cost perspective, economic perspective, not many customers are willing to pay. All right. It becomes a disparity across it. All right. So I think that is what, us as data center providers, we are challenged with how to make our design more efficient, how to make our design cheaper to the market, so that we can adopt the kind of infrastructure that a lot of the server manufacturers are actually moving to. All right, trying to make it more dense. But I think something's got to give in time to come. All right. Yeah.
Thank you. Martin, jump in here, please, because I know maybe you would like to say that, at Equinix, we just cover everything. But you do have your challenges, right?
It's a very, but it's, in truth, as was said, you can accommodate a range of power draws for customers from something pretty standard. At one time, 1.52 kVA per cab was considered to be quite something. Now cold aisle containment, etc., water cooling will take you up to 30 kVA per cab potentially. So all of those have to be accommodated, and the data center operator's challenge, of course, economically speaking, is to try to not end up with stranded power, whereby people take minimal power for a cap space and leave you with a bunch of power you're committed to procure, but you can't pass on to the customers. Densifying up can lead to the case where you have stranded space potentially, where there's not enough power to power. Generally speaking, the data centers are constructed with a forward looking over X years of life to accommodate the likely range of power that will be required. The problem is that everyone is tending to densify, throughput of traffic and power draw is tending to increase. New technologies of Moore's law accommodate that while reducing the temperature that CPUs run at in order to do the business. So that's a positive, but nevertheless, as I think Jeremy mentioned, this isn't sustainable. The more companies that go on the digital journey, the more power density that's required within a data center, and placing it all in one place has a downside in terms of both in terms of heat emissions and what happens to that heat, just dissipation. I mean, you can move to green cooling, such as adiabatic cooling, for instance, but that's heat radiated to the atmosphere. Ultimately, I think when we haven't touched on this yet, but and I'm kind of jumping ahead massively, but when you get to green energy and reducing carbon footprint, etc., there is also the question of, you end up with a whole bunch of heated water, and where does that go, or radiated heat to atmosphere? So, moves like heating water and providing it to a local community for heating homes and university halls and stuff like that, it is a great initiative because it's not wasted energy. At least you're not heating things twice. Sorry, I've kind of digressed slightly, but I hope you get where I'm going. The trend is unavoidably in one direction, but we've got to get smarter about how we use and dissipate this energy and heat that we create.
Thank you, Martin, and again, thank you for bridging it into let's say the environment, because environment is becoming more and more important, and keeping your cool about rising cost of the climate change. So, Christina, how Google optimizes cooling in the data center in a green way? How do you guys do this?
Well, I think
Tell us.
I will tell you. So I would say, I will start from the beginning, right? So from our point of view, what do we do best, right? What we do best has to do with analyzing data and doing machine learning. So this is the same logic. This is exactly the same logic that we are applying to our data center approach. So we are using machine learning and AI-oriented techniques to ensure that
we come later to the disruptive parts of it. Yes.
To ensure that the cooling of our data centers happens properly, and we also ensure that our customers, and this was launched a few months ago, can potentially use a simulator on their Google Cloud Console, basically to simulate which data center that could use that would have the less energy impact or the less carbon footprint impact. So I would say that from our point of view, this is definitely a very major commitment from us that we've publicly and multiple times made. We do intend to reach the point where we will be completely carbon free from our emissions by 2030, I think it is.
Yeah, that was the statement, 2030.
Right. So I would say that we are definitely put a lot of energy into this. I think you said it, the 3 years outlook is already very, very future proof. So it's definitely a journey, but we are definitely trying to do our best using our technology to get there. So AI, ML.
Okay, that's cool to hear. Matthias, you're almost not almost, with your bare hands. I mean, you're building data centers since 22 years, right?
Yep.
And you're actually opening another one next year. You will probably go. So, and you're actually, as they call it, with your hands and feet in the ground and building it from ground up. So where does the environment and, let's say, the carbon-free, mission of your company, how do you accomplish that?
Well, we just heard, on one side, such an investment you calculate 10 years. And maybe longer. On the other side, the technology changes, especially with the carbon-free technology, or they're changing so fast that it's very hard. I mean, today you try to really use the most efficient, most modern technology to, I would say, to avoid carbon as much as possible. What I also do is I plant some trees that
You better be, otherwise I come with the trees.
Yeah, no, it's not easy. You try to we really tear down a complete building, build everything from scratch new, and you try everything today possible. But yeah, let's see if it lasts more than 3 years.
Because what I do know from, I mean, your roof will be full with solar.
Sure.
You give back power to the community as well.
We try also to use the heat as much as possible.
So don't be that humble. So
the problem is the investment and to use it. The problem, especially come back to the air condition, free cooling. Yeah, in winter you use the cool air outside, and air to air is not very efficient. Yeah, if the compressors and the heat, the water is running, I can use this heat. I already told the mayor the best thing would be to build a public pool next to our data center. I heat it up.
Yeah. No.
But there is no.
No, unfortunately, but still. So, Kevin, I mean, over to you. I mean, how do you face the challenges of the demand actually, which is out there, to be as green as possible?
I think this journey takes multiple steps, and I think the future, it's not something that you can effectively plan for, but you have to focus what is the issue we're dealing with. So if you cut away all the noise, the focus is exactly what the gentleman talked about. It's about cooling, and the physics of cooling the air cooling is the weakest point of cooling. Whether you do free air or you actually have air condition, and you still need to extract the heat and put it away into hot water and what have you. So essentially, the process of using air as a conductor of heat has reached its optimal point of design for us. The future data center cannot be air cooled anymore. That's very clear in our discussion. That's also very clear in the way I see things. And the future data center will not be air cooled. In other words, we don't see the potential of growing more chillers and water to pump around the place. We are going to move into what we call hot plate cooling, actually metal against metal. We're already seeing the server companies and the chip manufacturer going that direction. We're also seeing customers talking about going into server that are no longer air-cooled, but they are actually, there's a cold plate sitting on top of where the fan is, and that cold plate is being cooled by normal water being pumped into it in very micro pump and micro facility. I've seen all this already. There are already trials going on. There are data centers that are redesigned to not require any air cooling. And all they're going to do is take water into the rack and circulate it out. And the entire cost structure of such type of data center is dramatic. So that's what I'm telling you now, that the future will evolve step by step. And if we just miss one step, we miss the opportunity. So that's all I'm going to tell you now. And server companies are going towards what we call cold plate cooling, no longer talking about air. When you hit 30 kilowatt per rack, it's impossible to use air to cool. And that's what I'm going to talk about now. And it also means that the size of data center, you can have 3,000, instead of 3,000 10 kilowatt rack, you would have 330 kilowatt rack. So think about that dimensional change of the physicalness of a data center. Remember, I told you about, we keep building big data centers, but at the end of the day, what we need is more powerful data centers. And it's equivalent to saying, you know, if you were in the Air Force, in the old days, we built big bombers to bomb the, you know, each other when we go to war. But today we build smaller, more agile bombers that carry even bigger bombs than the big bombers. So think about that in a data center, smaller data center, but higher power, smaller racks, but more power per rack. So you're gonna, the dynamics is gonna change. So that's the future. Thank you.
And Kevin, don't forget, I mean, the big bombers, they needed to be refueled in the air.
Yes, yes. And the small bombers are cheaper to build, faster to make, and they can be reconfigured for many users. Whereas the big bombers, you only do one thing with them, right? Then that's what data center has been. It's one size fits all. And that has been the case for the last 20 years. I remember I built my first Equinix data center in Singapore. I started here with Phil Keon for the previous COO of Equinix. And we built SG1, which has now got about 400 carriers in it. I built that in 2000, and you're right. When I suggested 2 kilowatt per rack, my investor nearly killed me and said, Carvin, that's 3 times what the market is building. I say, no, but that's the way to go. And that was the first Equinix data center in Singapore, SG1. And you look at it, life is changing very rapidly for all of us.
Exactly. Martin, you want to add something to it? And because you started this environment.
Well, yeah, kind of. We've been there kind of from the start. Yeah, well, so you started it. I would say the whole thing has been a journey. And I think there's a parallel really in the way that people have been looking at the global ecology as well. So, you know, obviously eco-warriors like young Greta Thunberg, etc., looking at the holistic picture of what we're doing to the planet while we go about developing commerce and growing wealth and prosperity for everyone and better living conditions. It can't be at the expense of our global resources, and it can't be at the expense of the destruction of the planet. So Equinix has actually got a website, which is actually just sustainability.equinix.com, where we talk about what the company is actually doing around sustainability. And like our Google colleague here, Equinix has 2030 as the target date for being 100% renewable energy. Now, 100% renewable energy is great, but there's bits that we can control, such as direct costs, things like the use of refrigerants that we have. Then there's indirect, such as what about the stuff that powers our data centers? Can we buy greener energy sources? And what about failover to fossil fuel burning generators as backup? Even when we've addressed those and we've got strategies for all of those in place, and it's a learning curve, right? The data center design is never complete. There's always, like processors and improving their efficiency and heat generation, it's the same with data center design. There's always improvements to be made. But after we've dealt with that, we then got to look at our supply chain and our customers themselves. And that's a big deal as well. And that's going to be a harder push. But certainly by 2030, we will be 100% green energy, and our carbon footprint will effectively be zero. I think you're going to talk about financing. I don't want to do this again to you. But in terms of, green finance and stuff like that, I think it's very important that we all buy into this idea of not operating our businesses and at the expense of the planet. And that's a moral and ethical responsibility that certainly Equinix, as one of the biggest data center operators, has placed at the forefront of our operations worldwide. And we signed up to this fully.
Thank you for bridging again to the green financing, Martin. I love having you on my panel because you do half of my job. So thank you so much. So let's do this quick round, and then I really would like to get disruptive because that's where I kick in, and Google. So a quick round on green financing. Jeremy, what's your take on that quickly? How do you see that?
For green financing, it's actually, although we are a new player within the market, I think we are also going down that route of green financing as well, on the basis of I think it's not how big you are, but playing your part in the wider economy and the support, right? Like what Martin has highlighted, right? It cannot be at the expense of the whole global warming, right? That's not something that we do. So but from BDX perspective, because we are funded by a PE who is an infrastructure fund, where they are already in the renewable space, and we are slightly lucky in that sense that from a renewables and the data center perspective, it's all linked up together. All right. There are certain projects that we are bundling renewables together for our newer projects. We are looking at for some of our projects in the newer greenfield builds. We are looking at generating power through gas turbines to ensure as the primary source and having utility as the alternate feed. All right. Those are the stuff that we are doing. Whichever sites that we can adopt free cooling, that's something in which we are doing as well. So I'm not sure whether 2030 seems to be the ultimate target, but BDX is sort of going there as well. So everybody, it seems to be the magic number now, in terms of the renewables. Right? Yeah. So I think from a green financing perspective, it is absolutely necessary, because the renewables, what we are seeing, it's at the moment it's slightly on a premium side. It's not that easy to adopt within the region of APAC, right? Where renewables are actually 20 to 30% more expensive than the traditional power that you're getting from the grid. Right. So I think that helps us offset our cost a little bit, right? But it's all for the wider cost.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Green financing, is that helping you in your path to be, let's say, as sustainable as possible, or you want to say something to it?
Yes, yes, of course. Okay, green financing is basically funds available for projects that must have certain criteria that must be met, which the financiers have set their goals on. So essentially, green financing is really helpful if you have a solution that is ready to go, that has all the elements to enable you to deploy, let's say, a fully renewable data center. So if you're talking about new build, then green financing becomes really interesting. They're very interested to be able to help you put the business model together, help you get the CapEx going and bootstrap the whole process. So green financing is essentially really helpful if you have a very good idea building a new generation type of data center that is from the ground up renewable, as opposed to the other problem that Martin talks about is that I have an existing data center and I want to evolve that into a more renewable based model. Now that's a different kind of project, but nonetheless, the financing model is available. So having green financing as an option, these are basically funds that are set aside that has very strict criteria. And if you meet them, they will happily come to you and at a fairly reasonable rate. So I read that as a financial modeling process as opposed to a technology things, okay? So that's the difference that we need to look at. But 2030, meeting the 2030 target, whoever you might be, you have to look at it from two different paths. Number one is that you have an existing data center. So the quickest way for you to reach a renewable target is that you hope that there will be a power source that is renewable. I was at a conference presenting at an energy conference in Thailand. And Thailand as a country, to my surprise, at least 30% of the grid power is renewable today, which you can buy from the power company. The challenge there, however, we discussed was to ensure that there's a way for me as a data center operator to be able to prove to my customer that that percentage of the energy I'm buying, if I can trace it to the source, is actually renewable. So this is a discussion the industry is having, the data center industry is having with the power provider. How do you prove to me that so many percent of that power that you're going to sell to me is truly renewable? So that's a totally different challenge we're facing. So I hope that answers your question. So I think multiple paths, if you want to reach 2030, you can't go there with a hope. You got to go there with some very tangible plan of action, and you have to break it down in different category of action to take to achieve the 2030 target together.
And you know what? There's another factor. It's called the calendar. And that calendar tells us, while looking in the mirror, that we have a responsibility to this earth. And that's what we need to, how difficult it is and how big the challenges are. But we are human beings, and that means that we invent things. And that means that I'm more than sure that we will make it. But that's a personal note. But Matthias, maybe you want to add something to what Kevin said.
Well, I mainly agree with all of them. We have to protect the planet, and just as building a new data center, I really try to do everything to build it as green as possible. One thing is, as Kevin said, how do they really prove that the green power you're buying is green? Because the problem is it costs more than regular power. So if I now talk to my clients and say, hey, you get green power, but you have to pay more, then he say, okay, how can you prove? So this is not easy. You get a certificate or whatever. The other thing is we try to produce as much as possible renewable energy on our roof with photovoltaic, and you could place windmills, but here I face the problem of regulations. Yeah, there's a community clause. I'm not allowed to build a windmill. And in Germany, if you have more than 100 kilowatt photovoltaic for solar power, they treat you like an energy company. So I have to follow other regulations. And I mean, we are a smaller customer compared to Equinix. We are a very small company. This is an administrational effect I cannot handle. So in this case, regulations blocks me to do more than I would like to do.
And you are in the EU, first of all, and you're in Germany, where you pay the most for the power. So congratulations. No, but as long as everybody takes its part, do whatever you can do within the reasonable, scheme. But let's become a little bit more disruptive. And looking at Christina, of course, this time. So, Christina, explain us the importance of virtualization, AI, machine learning, but also big data and its potential disruptive elements. What kind of innovation is Google bringing on the cloud market on these? And of course, what's the impact?
So first of all, actually, I want to start with or close with a personal note on everything that went around the table before, because I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And from my point of view, as you said, we each one have to make our own part. So I definitely second everything that everybody said up until now. But getting to your question, but in a way, I think it's very linked at the end of the day, because it's, and you mentioned virtualization, big data, AI, machine learning, so, and cloud, right? So we, Google Cloud as, I would say, the users of the data centers and collaborators with many of the companies before, at the end of the day, what we want to do, and our disruptive component is to bring new services to the final users and to whoever wants to use the technology that will reside in the data center. So what we are trying to do with our services, so leveraging on cloud as an hyperscaler, we are working on ensuring that we can bring services to final customers that allow customers to scale in the technology that they use, building new solutions for their own customers, their own end users. And this means transforming basically IT and transforming from a pure virtualization perspective. So we are not just talking about virtual machines anymore, but we are really talking about moving towards a data-oriented type of technology where we are really bringing customers the possibility to build new applications, serverless applications, work towards building final end user services that are based on creating end-to-end industry technologies. So I would say that the main aspect for us in this is not so much just the infrastructure, which of course is critical, but whatever service we can build on top of that to build end user services at the end of the day. So we are really leveraging on everything else that's before, right? To make sure that at the end we can deliver something new and disruptive.
Okay. Martin, how does it sound?
Yeah, absolutely great. And I have to say that this kind of follows on from what we were talking about earlier in the way that IX is evolving, digital transformation. You know, a big sort of behemoth central public cloud, even with private interconnection, is not the trend that we are seeing. There's a fragmentation, there's a...
Oops. Martin, you were talking. It was exactly fragmented. You were talking about it. So maybe Kevin, you can quickly jump in, and then hopefully that Martin will join us in a second. But be fragmented, please.
Yeah, I will try to be fragmented, not fragmented about it. Yeah, and I agree with the whole cloud scenario will continue to improve. But let me just throw well, something really dramatic, I feel, not on the compute space, but on the electrical space. One of the things that we're going to see in the next 5 years is the virtualization of the UPS. Today, if you look at our UPS platform across all data center, it's really very inefficient because we double the load in order to protect the customer, but we don't use all the load, but so it's a lot of wasted power. And I believe that I've been talking to UPS vendors. They're going to cloudify the UPS. Basically, we're going to be able to take all this load on the UPS and create what I call a virtualized UPS, which allow us to dynamically allocate UPS power to match with the cloud workloads that we'll support. So we'll see a major alignment between the electrical system being virtualized and to align with the cloud system that we support. And that's going to be really exciting, really, really exciting. And we're going to see for the first time the ability to create what I call pay-as-you-use energy system that connects the workload of the cloud to the workload on the UPS side. So that's I see that as very dramatic connection.
Thank you, Kevin. Martin, we lost you, so apologies for that. So, please pick it up where you left.
Yeah, sure. No, absolutely. Look, distributed cloud, AI at the edge. It ticks a lot of boxes, right? Pervasive computing is going to be the purveyor of digital transformation for much of the digitally connected world. And Google obviously plays a big part in that, as does many of the other hyperscalers. Equinix can be considered as the edge with our data centers for some people's purposes, but I'm very fond of saying now one man's edge is the next man's core. It really depends on horses for courses applications. You know, you may need to be at the base station for communication with a vehicle which is moving and you're handing off and computing stuff in real time at nanosecond or millisecond, sorry, level. But at the same time, 50 milliseconds might be quite adequate. The latency, the performance, the cost, and ultimately the security that you need for the application that you're running will determine where the workloads are analyzed and executed. And so I think there's a place for all of this, and energy consumption around that will change as a result. And it's very much what Kevin said about micro data centers becoming the norm, and for some applications that's definitely the case. So I think it's a very interesting trend, and the future looks very exciting, I feel.
Thank you so much. Last topic, guys, because on everything in life, security is a key thing. So Jeremy, if I can start with you, I mean, you know, we're facing quite some issues with security. Whatever you see it, however you see it, and actually whenever you see it, unfortunately. So for you guys, how do you tackle it, and what are we a little bit facing in the future, or should we be prepared of? A bit general question, but maybe you can address it.
Well, from a security perspective, well, what we are seeing is from the aspects of
okay, fragmented again, ladies and gentlemen. So Matthias, if I can ask you, how do you tackle the topic of security?
Well, tackle it. Now, there's like our new data center, there's the EN 5600. There's a very clear description of security for a tier 3 data center. You have to. I mean, as a colocation data center provider, means I build data centers not for us or for our service, only for others. I actually have to guess what my customer needs are. So the only chance I have is I lean on the EN 5600 tier 3. There is a very clear description of talking about physical security. You know, not cyber security, we're talking about physical security. So fence, access control and stuff. The good thing is the technology changed a lot. There's a lot you can virtualize with fingerprints or hand scan, or so it is getting more and more standard, and especially with the GDPR in Europe, you have to come to a higher level. That's the future.
Can I ask you, how is Google supporting the security?
So I would say that security is a crucial aspect for us, very, very important. And it's one of our main drivers in working with our customers. And actually, it's definitely in our DNA, because at the end of the day, we don't just work in the logic of data centers for businesses, but we started with this logic for the consumer business, right? So this is why it's even more important, because we need to make sure that what we do is secure for everybody. With that in mind, security is a matter of collaboration. I mean, you just said very importantly that when you work on the topic of security, there's something that is under your responsibility, something that is in the process of the other's responsibility. What we ensure is that our infrastructures, meaning at different layers, so from the infrastructure, from the networking infrastructure, up to ensuring encryption for the data that you put in the data centers, in our services, is top security. And we make security definitely one of our key drivers in the way we do our business for sure.
Okay, thank you. So now we know what these guys are doing, right? Thank you so much, Christina. So guys, unfortunately, talking roughly an hour about the data centers, the landscape, what's there, how do we tackle the environment, what do we do about it, talking about a little bit about security and so on. Martin, what is your scope on the future? What will we see? What can people expect talking to you guys, and or what should they watch for? Or what should they look out for? Help me here.
Well, so, I think I've touched on the same topics kind of repeatedly, really, but, if we just, in summary, everything is going digital. The new technologies will allow for more pervasive computing, and enterprise governments, national infrastructure, all will become increasingly dependent on digital technologies. In the process of that, two things I think are very important. I mean, the physical security of the data center is a given with Equinix facilities worldwide. We build them to, best in class standards. But in terms of InfoSec, the next wave of change in digital economies, it is going to mean that there are increasing openings for exposed risks for enterprises, for mission critical applications, and for critical national infrastructure, which need to be addressed. And while we're busy looking after the planet and being carbon neutral and addressing those changes and leveraging technology, we've got to be cleaner, we've got to be smarter, we've got to be more ecologically sensitive, while at the same time delivering security baked in at a fundamental level for many of these applications and workloads that we're encouraging our customers to use for very good reason. But I think we have a responsibility to make sure that we warn them best practices around architecting and leveraging the technologies as well.
Thank you, Martin. Jeremy?
Yeah, I think on the basis, sustainability is basically on top of our list. APAC has quite a fair bit to chase up in terms of Europe. All right, if you really look at, India is 5 years back of 5 years back of China, and then if in terms of the infrastructure, you're looking at Indonesia 5 years back of India. All right, there is still a lot of chasing up in this part of the world where we go and educate end users in terms of a more sustainable platform where everybody plays a part, because as a data center provider, end of the day, it's the customers that drives us. All right, there's so much we can do pertaining to purchasing PPAs and getting greener power and sustaining it from our own sense. But yeah, I think that's what we will see. I can only represent APAC where we are, right, in terms of this whole digital journey, all right, of the customers within this region. Right.
Thank you. Kevin, you always have some nice last words. Share them with us.
Thank you. I think at the end of the day, I've always believed in the last 20 years that change, whatever change it is, whatever change is sustainable. And I believe the human spirit is the one that drives us to continue to survive in this environment that we develop ourselves. So market force is going to be the key driver for us to watch out for the future. And today renewable is top of the list. And you mentioned something in passing, which I believe is really important. It go in sync with the fact that the digital economy is really being built up within all countries all over the world, not just Asia Pacific or Europe or whatever, but every country is getting into it. So the digital economy is going to be financially a significant component of any country's economy. Now, that brings us to security, and that's a real problem. It's a real challenge that we're going to face, and we have to protect, because the data centers are the factories of a digital economy. So those factories will have to be protected. And this is a serious discussion now. So the physical element we have discussed a lot of. For example, the latest challenge my team is trying to figure out is how to protect ourselves against potential drone incursion. That's more difficult to handle on the physical side. We used to worry about lorry crashing into our data center. Now we're worried about drones flying in. So the physical security, the actual cyber security is even more challenging. And there are a couple of things we're doing today to ensure that the systems that we are building, our electrical, our mechanical systems are today highly automatic and uses a lot of compute power. And we're trying to isolate those systems away from public IP addresses in order to ensure that we don't get cyber attack into our operational support system. So things like that are going to be part of the growing future. That's really important for us to, and it is part and parcel of the fact that data center, as the title of this particular seminar, that we are at the forefront of the vision of a digital economy. And for that purposes, we are going to attract all kinds of attention. So security and renewable, those are the two elements I see that we need to find better solution as we go towards the future together as a community.
Thank you, Kevin. Matthias, you want to add something to that? Can you? Of course you can.
I always can. No, I think most of it is said. There's so many details. We would sit here for another hour. No, I think the future, there will be more demand for data centers, and we can't stop this. Yeah? We're talking about digitalization, and this happens in data centers.
There you go. Christina, some famous last words, please. From the visionary Google.
I know, right? Well, I think all the others said it all. There's definitely, at the end of the day, it's the crucial aspect is that data centers are the factories of today, and this is where we are creating the value and the services of today. And I think this is the take-home message that I'm taking out of today's panel. So we definitely have a responsibility on multiple layers to make sure that we bring the right value out of this, I would say.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we close actually this session and close this day, is there any question? Yes, there is. Thank you so much. And I think that maybe, Aurelia, if you can get the mic over there, that would be lovely. So thank you very much for your question up front, and let's see if we can and or want to answer that. Let's see. It's not working. Okay, apologies for that. Thank you, Aurelia. Really kind.
Hello, Pier Giorgio Regini from Sparco. General question, Eric, I leave to you to address to one of the panelists. It is in the light of the general price decline in the telco market, how do the colocation providers, data centers, intend to manage the demand of cost reduction and keep on supporting the growth of the digital economy? Thank you.
I would say to have a vision that would and then translate this in a mission and put the money there. But I do see that. Matthias or maybe Christina, you want to say something to this point? I don't know.
Cost reduction is a very interesting point. Yeah, on one side we face more and more challenges, spending more and more money to make everything green, to make everything future-proof, and on the other side, there's the pressure of reducing costs. It's not easy. I mean, at the end, we were just talking about the future risk of security, as Kevin mentioned. Yeah, it's true. In the past, it was lorries. Today, it's drones. The challenge is to meet the future without rising the costs. I'm not really thinking about reducing the costs for the clients, because the demand and for the even more future-proven data centers just We were discussing the costs yesterday. You cannot imagine how much money is in a data center and how long it takes to get the money back.
If you get it fully back, do you want to add something?
Just want to, I mean, I just want to add one very small thing. I think one of the important things to get there, since you're mentioning that the margins are reducing, but the costs are increasing, is, and it kind of goes back to our nature, but analyzing that data is the key aspect at the end of the day. So we have to find the right trends and optimizing the right costs. So one of these is on sustainability. Other aspects can be in ensuring that the way we continue to build our data centers is scalable in the right way and can scale up progressively based on customer needs. But at the end of the day, I think it's important to ensure that a data analysis is at the bottom of it as well.
Which I cannot do as a data center provider.
Absolutely.
Which is difficult for a data center provider. But just some food for thought. We bought the iPhone, let's say, when was it? When did we buy the iPhone 3? How much did we pay? And how much do we pay today?
Yeah.
So why is it not possible to pay if the demand is bigger? And Kevin and Jeremy and Martin, jump in and say something if you want to. Why is it not possible to pay a bit more for a better service, a more secure environment, where we take the responsibility of the environment? Why not?
Kevin, do you want to say something?
It is just
let me just
food for thought.
Quick thing to answer the gentleman's question. There are 4 elements of costs, what I call expenses, direct costs, that is in operating a data center. So you assume that you built a data center and the depreciation is down the line. So you're really talking about operating costs. So if we can save some money in operating costs and pass that money back to the customer, that would be nice. So if we analyze it from that point of view, then there are 4 elements we have to work on, but we don't control any of them as a data center operator. And I think you know, Martin, you would agree with me with Equinix. So the first element is maintenance. We built something, and so one of the only way we can change the maintenance model is to rethink how we design a data center so that we can do without maintenance, or what we call move from what we do today, which is reactive maintenance, to predictive maintenance. Right? There's a significant capability. Now, my team has been building a business model on that. If we can work towards predictive maintenance, which is really possible, and this is a part of machine learning and AI that we're looking at, very small element, but to convert the entire maintenance mentality to the other way around, we can save some costs, and hopefully we can pass it back to our customer. So that's one element that we can control. The other element is the usage of electricity. Now herein, we have to work with our customer. Today, I will tell you now, I've been running data center for the last 15 years. The customer will tell me he needs 4 kilowatt, but in actuality, they only use 2 kilowatt, right? So herein, we got to work closer with the customer, or if possible, we have to be able to sense the workload and reactively direct the electricity to them at the equal amount. If we can do that really, really well, and there are some major experiments going on in Scandinavia now under a project called Boden Project, where we are trying to understand how to ensure that the electrical system can react directly with the compute system to provide just enough power for the computer to work without being over provisioned. Now, these are things that we are working on in an industry. And if we can get that correct and we can apply that correctly, then again, we're going to be smarter at doing it, and therefore we can save some money, and hopefully we can share some of that saving with our customer. So these are the 2 fundamental things I want to bring to the gentleman's attention, but it needs collaboration. We need the customer to work with us. And that's the key that's missing now. If the customer will start working with us, we could change the dynamic. We need to start doing that. That's my answer to the gentleman's question.
And interestingly, my my comment was going to be, there are two aspects to business. First is controlling the costs, and the other is increasing the revenue. And the Equinix, right? And the Equinix perspective has always been, you know, please don't view what we provide in the way of co-location space and power and services as a cost center. Consider it as a revenue center. And there's been a lot of investment in Equinix over the years, and particularly with our fabric services, cloud on-ramps, digitization, you know, all of that is aimed at taking the telco customer, particularly as a partner on the journey with us, and enabling them to capture these new business opportunities, because they're primarily well-placed, and no one wants to see enterprises commoditizing telcos and driving them to compete on a race to zero. That doesn't help them, and ultimately it doesn't help the world. So our view has been to do both, try and contain costs and being smarter and more efficient at what we do, but also take our customers such as Telecom Italia and Sparkle on the journey with us, and act as a revenue center rather than a cost center.
Does that answer your question, sir? Is it more than sufficient from all the experts around the world? Thank you for your question. And thank you, guys. And Kevin, Jeremy, and Martin, guys, again, thank you so much. I cannot thank you enough for being again here with us. And you know what? The bet is on. And you promised next time you'll be live here sitting next to me, right? That's
looking forward to it.
So thank you.
Rome, good. Singapore, good. Yeah.
And we'll come to your door, to your front end and to your doorstep. We'll be there together with all the partners around here. So thank you so much, guys. So Martin, Jeremy, and Kevin, and of course Matthias. Thank you so much for being here and sharing, and of course Christian. Thank you,
Matthias.
so much.